Well, South Africans walk with an eye behind their backs. They are afraid of the dangers of the roads, and when the roads just seem so safe for a journey, the home is hardly the place to rest, as hundreds of people have been kidnapped in their homes. It's not a strange occurrence to see a South African shopper taken away in her car by kidnappers. The horrific experiences have become a regular revelation by locals, and not much is changing. So tackling this heinous criminal act is a national issue, and it involves the government just as much as the people. The next victim of kidnapping is unknown, and it is no respecter of class, although the affluent have been reported more victims than any other social class. Now, what do we know about South Africa's growing kidnapping industry, and how can this menace be tackled? Is our conversation today on The Square. Welcome, I'm Sulaiman. South Africa has one of the highest rates of kidnapping in the world. You heard that right. Now, the country, one of Africa's giant economies, has some of the most economically troubled people on the continent. Despite these challenges, they get kidnapped and their life savings are paid as ransoms. Since the end of 2021 till now, there's been a sharp increase in the rate of kidnapping in South Africa. In the last 10 years, the rate of kidnapping has more than doubled. Currently, there's at least one person kidnapped in every 10,000 people in South Africa. Now, crime syndicates are growing in the country, and they have connections to other countries in the region and abroad. Sometimes these kidnappers go as far as clearing out the bank accounts of their victims, and in extreme situations, they kill them. Herman Bosman, kidnapping and extortion manager at TSU International, and Mike Bolhuis, who is a specialist investigator into serious violent and economic crimes, join me now. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. And of course, let's start with you, Bolhuis. You know, the reason behind kidnapping, which is on the rise in South Africa, is some that many Africans would like to know today. Let's start. I think it's a better place for us to start.
Me?
Yeah.
As you very well said, in South Africa, kidnapping is and has been on the rise for the last several years. It is one of the most violent crimes that can happen in South Africa because of late, many of those that are kidnapped are killed as well. So you've got many levels of kidnapping. The one that we're probably going to discuss tonight is the highest level, and that is when businessmen or extreme rich people are taken and held for ransom. And these kidnappings are planned properly. The people are surveilled for a long period of time. All the information about them are gathered. They have connections in the authorities, these syndicates, and they make sure they, like an oiled machine, can commit this crime and can get away with it. On this level, on the high level, it is extremely orchestrated, and they rely on technology, tracking of cell phones, information of the family, their banking details, all their whereabouts, families, friends, what they have and what they surround themselves with regarding safety or security. So when they do pounce and when they do take, they leave about no evidence behind, if any. And this makes it so difficult for the authorities to, or any authority, including us, to catch them because it's so well planned and because they leave no evidence behind. Then they would start with the obviously the threats and the intimidation and the extortion and get as much as possible. They know what these people have and what they can give, and then they will release. But sometimes the kidnapping can also go alongside with other reasons why a person is kidnapped. and that's why they sometimes kill the person that they have in hand. But yes, it's a very, very big problem, and it's been escalating, and it's a very big concern, especially for rich businessmen, as I've said, or those that are financially very strong.
Let me bring in Herman. Herman, well, we've had conversations in the past, and it's shocking and really sad that this is also happening again. And, you know, for Nigerians that are watching, they are also amazed that almost the same is happening in Nigeria at the moment. As we speak, there is a police chief who is in the hands of kidnappers to the extent that the ransom bearer has also been kidnapped. So how much of an impact has the economy been on the increased crime rate, specifically in South Africa, Herman?
Good evening to you and the viewers. Yes, the economy and the unemployment rate in South Africa is a reason that we need to be concerned. And that is fueling kidnappings to a large extent, together with dysfunctionality within the government structures, as well as corruption. So tackling this problem cannot only be the police's responsibility. It needs to be addressed holistically, and we need to start at the beginning with education, obviously also with information gathering, intelligence structures, assisting the police with investigation. Together with that, different legislation needs to be considered to fast-track assistance and helping the police service to manage the investigation process. And then the judiciary needs to be relooked at as far as how will we have evidence presented in court without having the hostage and victims standing in court and testifying against these people that are severely traumatized and now having to testify. So yes, nowadays the kidnapping syndicates, not only the ones doing kidnapping, it's not only the bad ones, if I may use that term, but also the needy, the ones that's hungry, that is turned to something that looks very profitable and that is currently working for them to obtain funds and money to assist them.
And, you know, Mike, you said something about leaving no trace. It then means one thing, we're dealing with very intelligent criminals here, aren't we?
Yes, I want to add on to what my friend has said there, that there are levels of kidnapping. What he's referring to is very important to explain. Due to the poverty and the ignorance in our country, the illiteracy, that is a deadly combination. And crime begets crime. When a guy commits a crime and another guy sees it, or when criminals get involved in crime and other people or potential criminals sees that that crime pays, they will get involved. And that's when they jump on the bandwagon. So the small kidnappings, the lower level kidnappings could be where elderly people will go to the supermarket, they get grabbed, they get held, one gets taken and they withdraw all the money from the ATMs. Even the trolley with all the groceries bought would be taken. Sometimes they would be put in their car. And the car would be taken and they would be dropped off somewhere, and then later the car could be found, or even the car gets taken and chopped up and sold. So it is not just a crime of just a kidnapping anymore. It can turn into a very serious violent crime like murder or GBH or serious assaults or even rapes. But it's like a combination of several crimes that makes the crime much worse. On the higher level of what we have been speaking about, these criminals are in a different bracket. They are extremely trained, they are intelligent, they are hooked up with authorities that might help them, that could be in the police, even sometimes in government level and municipality level. So they work like an oiled machine. It's a group of people working together, and they have got one thing that the needy and the hungry and the illiterate don't have, and that is patience and money. So they can use the best of cars, the best of cell phones, the best of all the technology. They can commit perfect cyber crimes. they can do surveillance, they can buy and bribe. This is a syndicate. This is a planned, orchestrated crime that can take up to 6 months, and they get millions. The cases that we've been involved with, most of the overseas businessmen that were taken paid hundreds of millions of rands, and it's usually laundered, and that is also in place. They've got their connections in banks, the money hopscotch all over the world, from London to Hong Kong to any and other country, and eventually it's just so difficult to track and trace. And with what my learned friend also has said is that the authorities is not up to scratch. They do not have the infrastructure, know how to prevent this crime, which is very difficult in itself. There's no proper intelligence services. There is no informant structure in South Africa anymore. Me and him, we were used to in our younger days that there was always a proper informant infrastructure and a proper national intelligence structure. It's not there anymore. So the crimes happen right under our noses without we even getting a whiff of it. All we can do now is warn all these extreme businessmen to be extremely careful, and you'll probably ask us later what is the best advice to give them. But take note, there are levels of kidnapping. There are quite a few levels. The ones that are most committed are, as my friend has said, by those that has seen that this pays, they can commit this, can get away with it, and that crime pays on the level of just taking a person, holding him for a day, just taking all his money or his groceries or whatever he has, and then release them.
So Herman, you know, these are no aliens, and I'm trying to make sense of what Mike has said. Now we're talking about the building trust and faith in the people. Back in the day, as Mike said, the people will volunteer information to the authorities, making them, you know, get ahead of these criminals. What do you think is also responsible for a drop in that fine once upon a time culture of the people volunteering information?
Well, we cannot ignore the fact that the police specialized units were disbanded years back, and that there were no capacity to deal with various specialized crimes, and that we're now trying to get back and bringing some of that back onto the forefront in investigating this very atrocious deed of kidnapping. In my view, the worst crime that can ever be committed against a person. So those specialized units will have to be re-established, will have to start with a new program, and my personal belief is that we need political will. This is not just, as I said, lying in front of the police in investigation and prosecution from their side, bringing the people to book. We need to approach this holistically, where we need to admit that South Africa is very fast slipping down a very dangerous road where investors will not invest in this country with the fear of their loved ones being kidnapped. And I have seen real problem with this the last couple of months, where people, affluent people with money in all races and walks of life, are busy considering packing up and sending their loved ones out of the country and reconsidering whether they should invest or not. And we need not wait until it's too late and then we want to try and get people back. We must address it now. We mustn't wait until the problem is so severe that it is completely out of control. The statistics currently, we're looking at 38 reported cases a day. We're already at the same figures and past that for 6 months than what we've seen previously in a year. By the end of this year, we may even see for the first time ever digits and 11 or 12,000 kidnappings committed in the annual period. We've never had that. So that concern needs to be addressed politically by the leaders of this country and making this a priority crime more important than a lot of other crimes, because the moment you have investors packing up, you have more unemployment, you have more instability, you have more kidnappings, and you have more various other crimes that's going to be committed, and the vicious circle will just continue. So this is something that I honestly feel needs to be looked at as a matter of urgency.
And Mike, give us a sense, because you're also expert in economic crimes. How big is this? How big? Give us a sense of the monies that lost, that have been lost so far, especially to extortionists and even kidnappers.
Yeah, let me shock you guys. The most money lost, not only in South Africa, but in the world, is due to cybercrime. The second one, in my opinion, is in line with others as well, but it could be on the level of kidnapping. Because if you take the high-level bracket of kidnapping, they work with multi-millions of dollars. But you get other crimes in South Africa that is equal to that, like cash in transits, or bank or ATM robberies, etc., etc., or the hijacking of construction, the hijacking of businesses. South Africa, unfortunately, is a lucrative country to commit crime because you can commit it and can get away with it. We also sit with a situation where the government is mostly corrupt. Unfortunately, we pray that they change, and we unfortunately also have a police force that is mostly corrupt. Corruption does not necessarily mean you're selling a docket. It means when you cannot protect and serve. The moment you're a policeman and you cannot protect and serve, you are committing misrepresentation. You are a fraud. You cannot say you're a painter and then once we find out you can't paint the house, we realize you're a mechanic. You cannot misrepresent yourself when you give a service to the public. And that is for every situation like that in our country. And it's the same with the government. So we are not protected. We are not being served by our government and by the police. They are good policemen. It's a small majority, a small piece of the police force that really wants to protect and serve and assist the public and make a difference. But unless they are supported by the total police, it will obviously never change. So the monies that are lost in South Africa due to crime is enormous, and it's never regained. In other words, even if you do catch them, it does not come back to South Africa. And even if you do make a dent into the high level of kidnappings in South Africa, it is not something that you would read in the newspaper or that we can say to you, hey, look here, we've got a bag of money back, and we can give it back to those who it's been taken from.
Mike, sorry, let me jump in here quickly, Mike. Still with you, Mike. Apologies for butting in. Has there been any established case of these criminals having a safe haven outside South Africa, especially with monies gotten from such criminal acts?
Oh, yes. If I understand you correctly, you're asking if these guys are connected transatlantic with
Absolutely.
Yes, they are. As I've previously explained, these guys have got their connections overseas. Make no mistake, the high-level kidnappings are being organized by people outside of South Africa. They're just abusing and misusing those in South Africa to just play a small part. They might be the real team, the task team that they would appoint to grab the man or the family and hold them. I'll put that light on in a moment. So if you take in consideration how well planned and how oiled machine they do this with outsiders giving the instructions, they are the head, and they have got a second level and even a third level, and those that are actually taking the bodies, holding the bodies at a specific spot, which is getting paid. Then after monies has been received, the main money goes out and is actually laundered out of the country. That's how it's done. That's on the high level. The inside in South Africa, smaller kidnappings are happening in South Africa, and they are enriching themselves by keeping the money to themselves as criminals in South Africa.
And Herman, these syndicates Mike spoke about, now we're... Mike, I hope you're still there.
I'm here.
All right, great. I thought I lost you for a bit. Now, we're talking about these syndicates that Mike spoke, I beg your pardon. I wanted to talk to Herman. Herman, the syndicates that Mike spoke about, since they're far away from South Africa, some of them, how important now is intelligence in tackling these crimes?
Well, once again, as I've highlighted, we need an integrated process addressing this holistically, and also with various other agencies and network with them. This is not only a problem that we need to address in South Africa. This is definitely an international problem, and we need to work with counterparts in other countries as well, addressing this. And also big corporate companies need to sit and plan addressing this, where they have business right across Africa and other countries that may be under threat, may be used to launder money. We're looking at the banking sector and all these structures that need to go and sit and see what is being used and what is the current problem, and how are their platforms used in the communication industry and in the money industry. That is huge. How do they exploit and how do they actually use all these different platforms to commit crime? So we need to investigate each and every method that is utilized, and then from that perspective, come up with a strategy and a plan to curb this. The criminals do that very, very well. They don't have red tape, they don't have legislation that shackles their ankles and their way of work under various pretenses of human rights. They can work and operate freely, and at the end of the day, us as law-abiding citizens are paying the brunt. So we must go and see, how do they do this, and how do they actually network, and what can we do to curb this from our side, and also stay within the boundaries of the law, making sure that they're brought to book and pay for what they've done, and to buy back confidence. But this is no task that's going to happen overnight. Each and every person will have to play an active role, and each and every company in this country will have to play an active role in addressing this international problem, coming from various sectors in the world to South Africa. And I don't want to go in detail which countries are behind it predominantly and where the money goes to, due to various investigations that's currently in progress. But we need to follow all those leads and realize that it's not only any more international syndicates. We've got well-vested local copycat groupings acting and working either in a partnership or in similar to a company structure, where they have their meetings and plan properly how they're going to go about executing these actions. And that procedure, as I said, don't want to discuss on open discussions, but we need to go and analyze that, and then the government will have to sit and say, well, how are we going to address this on a macro level? Are we going to address this not only looking over and over at the police having to address this and constantly referring to what they must do, but also equipping them and making their hand a lot stronger with legislation, empowering them to do a proper, speedy examination of the facts, and how can we bring this to book? How can we have evidence in court without a person standing in court testifying that has just been detained for many months or even years, being assaulted, being abused, and then having to stand there and giving evidence with people on the gallery looking at you, and you don't know if this is going to happen to you again. That is definitely not fair, and that cannot be expected from the victim. So that needs to be really looked at. And also the procedures of fast-tracking life and limb investigation, as far as what can the police do immediately when that case is reported, and what is at this point in time shackling them of obtaining that information, and then we must capacitate that ability.
Let me stay with you for a bit, Herman, and it has to do with now it has been so established that there is some form of international connection there. Now, let us in. Do you know of any move by your country's government with any of these countries, whether Malaysia, whether Pakistan, to have that conversation of having collaborative efforts in tackling these criminals?
There's certainly discussions pertaining to that I'm aware of, but not on the level and the extent that it should be. It's more procedural, and it's on individual case matters that it will definitely happen, and it does happen. But there needs to be a program. There needs to be a program formulated by the government to say, let's prioritize this, let's assess this on a monthly, quarterly manner. And having prioritized that, also making funds available, looking at maybe specialized courts being available to fast-track applications for court orders, and people that understand kidnapping to having received that and assess that, fast-tracking all the legalities to assist the police in this. We have far too few policemen trained, understanding the complexity behind kidnapping, and also how this needs to be presented in court to have a conviction. And that is a problem. It's completely different to a housebreaking, a car theft, or another crime. Even a murder is easier to investigate than to investigate a kidnapping. There's a different process that needs to be followed, and the extent of an investigation, in some cases that we have been involved in for many years, the investigation can continue. That is very tiring and completely different to a crime that's completed, while a kidnapping keeps on continuing for a very, very, very long, uncertain period of time.
And Mike, do you think South Africa residents are security conscious enough?
Unfortunately not. Myself, and I know of many others, and Herman and his people are daily warning the public. We are constantly on TV, in the media. We send out projects warning people what they should not do, that they should be careful of their phones, what they should do and not do with all their communication platforms. But they are extremely irresponsible. The rich flash their diamonds and their golds and their bling, their cars, their holiday houses, their businesses, and they flaunt many stuff that they shouldn't. I've always warned the public about the carelessness of using social media, exposing yourself, because the criminal of today relies on information. He doesn't just not walk about and say, all right, I'm going to take this man and hold him, and I'm going to claim so much money. He does, the criminal element of today makes a proper evaluation. He does a proper identification. He does a proper risk analysis, and he does a proper investigation. And funny enough, that's the very thing that an investigator should do as well with any case. The only thing that the criminal doesn't do is he doesn't do a crime prevention factor afterwards, which we then do. But be that as it may, that is the problem. The South Africans are extremely careless, and they do not heed to the warnings, and they're still about thinking this would not happen to me, or it's difficult to explain. They just are careless, and this is a very big concern to us. They are also not, which is a very important thing, if not the most, they are also not prepared to work together. We have a very big problem. I don't know if it's the same in Nigeria, but 2 South Africans here have 4 opinions and 5 churches. They have difficulty to agree. They cannot look past color, creed, political affiliation, beliefs. They have got so many opinions and disagreements that they just don't stand together, and they cannot see crime as the common goal that needs to be addressed, to be eradicated and prevented. And those 2 things, if I can call it the ignorance and the illiteracy of people regarding crime, they see it in the news, they hear it every day, but it's like the penny does not really drop. Although you get those that becomes extremely paranoid, and because they are like that, then they withdraw completely and they do not want to get involved, as Herman has said, not coming forward and working together as a whole or as a group in our country. And you have this dilemma now. How do you get people involved? They're scared, they're paranoid, they live in fear, they don't know what to do, and they also have not heeded to what's actually been going on in this country and what we've been warning out, and they just carry on and do the wrong things on especially the electronics and social media. So my warning would be that if those two things could be addressed, with that what Herman has said as well, it can make a difference, but it's difficult to see this happening.
Well, Mike, I tell you something, it's the same here in Nigeria about diverse opinions on issues, and sometimes people argue over these, and experts like yourselves, both of you, Mike and Herman, will speak. And the last time you heard about the prison break, and experts warned before that occurred, nothing was done. But when we come back, we'll take a moment. When we come back, we'll talk about what the police is doing, if there's any anti-kidnapping task team in place to reducing the incidence of crime in South Africa, and pretty much more what individuals can do, especially when they have their playtime on social media. Join us again. A lot happening in Africa, Nigeria and South Africa, and even Ghana and some other places. The police have been able to set up anti-kidnapping task team to reduce the incidence of crime in these countries. Now, with their patterns, specifically in South Africa, already established in the stages of kidnapping, solutions may be on the horizon. There are spotters who find the next person to kidnap and register their vulnerability before informing pickers of their location. A good way to tackle this is by identifying the people who perform these roles, and that's one of the key things Herman and Mike have highlighted, talking about our lifestyles and social media activities. There have been increased high-value cases in South Africa in 2022, with as much as $3 million getting paid as ransom, and Mike says that it just might be above that because it is mind-boggling. Now, regions like Western Cape, Gauteng, and KwaZulu-Natal are pressure points in the country. So with me here on the show is Herman Bosman and Mike Bolhuis. And let's start with you, Herman. You know, there's a clear identification of the problem up to the point of the methods. And how do you expect the police to react?
Well, definitely to have specialized units addressing this is a very important factor, and then equipping them together, as I say, the legislation. You cannot have a police service and just expect of them to do work with legislation that's outdated to look at the problem we have now. The problem was never this big. You cannot work with legislation when the problem was completely different and were a lot less. So we need to look at it completely different, and not only having specialized units in the various provinces, a national team is not going to work. You have to have, in the area that there's a problem, specialized units in the provinces that's capacitated to deal with this, together with the equipment, together with training, and understanding the problem within a legal framework of assistance that they can then function within to bring those people to book. And then obviously function also within the international context with international police agencies and structures. The intelligence structure's got a vital role, and we need to establish the capacity specifically with regards to kidnapping as well. But it also has become high time that us as individuals, each and every one, take responsibility primarily for their own safety as well. And as it was highlighted with regards to social media, I would urge you, each and every person listening to this program, after this program, take your phone, take your laptop, and go and research yourself. Put your name and surname in on the open source media. Just go and Google or go and research yourself. And also your cell phone number or your email. Just see what you can get about yourself. And you would be really shocked to see what you have on open source available that anybody can exploit and target you. And I'm thinking specifically about the children doing online gaming. Who do you know that you are playing with? That voice on the other side, that becomes your best friend because you guys are doing the shooting game together, talking to you and say, hi, where are you from? No, I'm from Cape Town. And he pretends to be from another location. And he's suddenly your friend. And you convey information to him, where you stay, what your father and mother does. And there's background pictures in some cases that you can see about that person, what it looks like. And you're starting to work on that person to get information. And that is something that our children are not aware of. They are so interested in playing this game, but on the other side, that other party you are playing against is not really interested in this game. He's just exploiting you to get information. And that can be, at the end of the day, for financial reasons, human trafficking, the sex industry, that is huge. And we need to warn people. There's nothing like a free meal or something you've won, or this friendly uncle that suddenly appears. Be aware of the lurking person in the dark and behind that conversation that you don't know. You don't know who you're dealing with and who you speak to on that open source platform.
You know, Mike, listening to Herman, you know, that could send chills down the spine of anyone, but it is what it is. And we must start talking about what the people can do and what experts like yourselves can also do. It brings me to asking you, Mike, how important can private security agencies be in this battle against kidnapping and other forms of extortion?
Well, to add on what Herman has said is, let me make a few statements. Number one, the biggest crime in the world, there is no bigger crime. And that steals literally the most money is cybercrime. That's the future, is cybercrime. Can be used for good, but it's presently absolutely used for evil. Secondly, the cell phone, this Okie, this thing, is the next DNA. If I were to be at a crime scene and there would be a body, there would be a heap of documents, there would be several heaps of forensic information and a cell phone, and they were to ask me which I would choose as to start with, I can only take one. I would take the cell phone because the cell phone has the person's saliva on, fingerprints, so it has the DNA. And I can tell you now, on the cell phone, I will tell you what you believe, who's your wife, and if you have a girlfriend, where your kids go to school, do you play games, are you involved with pornography, you name it. I will totally profile you on your cell phone. Not only that, I can show you where you've been, and I can link and withdraw via, if I have the expertise, which I say very carefully, I can even, from where digital information was stored, pull it from the cloud. So the cell phone is endless in the information that it can give you. So with that said, it is of extreme importance that the cell phone in future is treated with the absolute respect that it requires and professionalism. And if you lose your phone, and I have to say this word, and you shit yourself, then you know you have had too much information on your phone. So what Herman has said there is what needs to be done. People need to clean their phones. They need to go through their phones and make sure that there's nothing on the phones that puts you in a compromising position. I would also highly advise, because time is of the essence for us, me and Herman, to advise you with everything that we want to say. But for us, instance, we send out projects where if the people go on our Facebook and they put in extortion, sextortion, SAPS impersonators, SAPS corrupt cops, and knocks and scams, and they go on our Facebook, they will read in those projects the most horrific crimes that has been committed of people in South Africa that has gone through those cybercrime cases. And bringing me further to enlightening people to prevent these kind of crimes in our country, there has to be highly trained, thoroughly trained policemen that can identify, evaluate, investigate, do proper risk analysis investigations, and then crime prevention afterwards. And unless you have that, you cannot deal with this kind of crime if it's already happened. And usually a crime like kidnapping, you only get involved in it after it has happened, obviously. But crime prevention needs to become the most important thing in our country, and that's where an informant structure has to be reintroduced into South Africa, and we need to try and do our utmost best to get the public, as he has said, involved where they can comfortably come forward, knowing that when they give this information, they will be protected, paid well, and looked after, and the information extremely privately and confidentially treated, and with a quick and thorough policing effort done, and judicial system that works together, that it doesn't run over a couple of years, and everything that Herman has explained there, which people just cannot stand and cope with, going to court for years and years with an inept and ineffective judicial slow-go system and a corrupt policing system where every now and then there's a new police officer or the docket got stolen, or even those who are involved in assisting the police and preventing this crime has been killed as witnesses. So this is a mouthful, and I hope it makes sense. But unless this and everything that I've said here and we've discussed tonight is in place, this kind of crimes and cybercrime, the kidnappings and all other violent crimes and economic crimes will unfortunately flourish in our country because we cannot prevent it. And once a crime, as I've said before, is committed and it's not stopped and severely dealt with proper punishment, then crime begets crime. If crime is successful, especially due to our poverty situation and ignorance and illiteracy situation in our country, there's all these criminals that used to not be criminals will be criminals and jump on the bandwagon and commit these crimes.
And Mike, I didn't think that was a rhetorical question. If you were making sense, yes, you are making sense, and I'm sure South Africa and the continent is happy to have you both, share some of these, very vital information. It comes back to you, Herman. How can the people, if not the government, identify these syndicates? Are there telltale signs for anyone to know that, wait a minute, I think I'm being watched by some bad guy?
Well, definitely situational awareness and your environment that you function in is critical. You need to understand where you live, where you move, and where you go about. And when you travel as well, to know your area. To make it your business, to make safety your priority. Don't look at your phone the whole time when you walk in the street or when you drive, be on the telephone. Observe the road, make sure nobody's following you and nobody at least is following you home. The biggest number of people are still taken en route between home and work or back from work home, because obviously there's a pattern to that and it's very easy for them to exploit that, and then you become a target. Make sure that you have proper preventative measures, both work and both home, and while driving, that you are very much aware of who is behind you. And should you be followed, that you can go to a dense populated safe area like a shopping center with cameras, which is definitely a problem to criminality, where there's a lot of people with cameras and more safe environment. But that you deliberately do that and notify somebody on your phone that you are currently being followed on an app that you can have pressing a button on your system, car system that you currently follow. But don't go home. Don't take that threat home. We've seen more and more bogus police and people being pulling public over, and also a case in Cape Town where the person pretend to be a police official or a traffic official with uniform and then pull you over and kidnap you. From my side, if you're not sure, switch your hazards on, indicate that you are aware that you need to be pulled off and you're not sure whether it's a policeman. Put your hand out of the window and indicate, I see you, I understand you behind me, and drive to a place where it's safe. Don't just pull off the road there and go to this individual that you're not sure we're using the car unmarked, or even if it is marked. If you feel uncomfortable, drive slowly. Don't go in a high-speed chase and try and get away. In the sense that may, if it is a real police officer, have actions from his side to be taken. But surely keep on driving to a place of safety. So we need to implement certain measures, and also the police need to understand why are the people in South Africa reacting like this? Why are we not stopping? And they, I'm sure, more and more realize the problem that we are facing. If we look at cybercrime as an issue, the problem between cybercrime and the human is, with cybercrime, you can have various systems and firewalls and programs, and it's money. But it's very different when they take a loved one, your daughter, your wife, your son, or anybody close to your husband, and you have to deal with a human life at threat with a pathetic person that comes with a AK-47 and groups of people to take you hostage. That is so pathetic that people even do that, and then they're so proud of themselves in the criminal conduct and so brave when they speak on the telephones on how great job they're doing and what you have to do. But the method they use and employ to do this is so sad and absolutely sick.
And Mike, let's talk quickly about the risk for South Africa and the continent, because now listening to both of you, we just realized there's a global problem. But again, it's less restricted to the continent and specifically where you are, South Africa. What are the risks for if this problem is not sorted soon?
Well, the risk is severe, and we already see the effect that crime has on our country. Let me tell you, actually the worst is what happens to the people's health. I have seen people, young people, either commit suicide or become ill or withdraw completely or have psychological or psychiatric problems where they just cannot cope. They just don't make it. They get into a state of mind and a mindset where they are not involved and do not get forward and would not in any way get involved with anything that is confrontational. That is one of the greatest risks up ahead, that people will get more and more isolated and more actually sick because of the crimes I don't really even go into paranoia. We deal with so many cases of paranoia nowadays because people are living in absolute fear, and fear has an immense effect on the human body. Then secondly, more on the withdrawal side, people becoming, working together in small cliques and groups and becoming even vigilantes or lawless themselves is another risk. And then I would also say that the fall of any and proper, any form of reasonable alliances and communications politically amongst the groups and between people of color. That divide is also becoming, because of crime, bigger. So the political groups are falling apart, all of them. And the groups and people of ethnic groups and color is distancing themselves from each other. And this is a very serious effect in our country, which even worsens the already biggest problem we have in our country is that we cannot stand together against crime. We cannot stand together about literally anything. And if you have that situation with a government with so much corruption, the police and the authorities which has so much corruption, and the public that has no respect or fear towards the government or the police, then you sit in you're in a situation where it turns into survival. And that's when you fall into anarchy. And that's when everything collapses. And we already see the infrastructure that has collapsed. We have so many problems in our infrastructure, power. It's just, if we look at the economic situation, it just cannot cope with what we are going through. And you have got this emotional situation that we have in our country. And then you've got this political and the corruption situation in our country. You can think for yourself what that does to old people and what that does to children and to parents. And that is the risk that we are facing. And this is the way down for us. And this is why we are trying our utmost best to get just three things done. That the government, the police, and the public work together, have one common goal. Let's disagree about everything, that's fine. But let's see crime as our main and common enemy and deal with it together.
Well, I think it's a fine place for us to leave it, but I'd like to take a closing word from Herman before we go. So just if you can do this for a minute, more tips, are there other that you want to share with South Africans, Nigerians, and everyone watching across the continent, what to look out for?
Well, I will definitely do so, but I want to just stress one thing. We must stop saying other people must do. We must start with admitting the problem, and each and every one of us say, what can I do? How can I change this? Start with yourself. And if we all do something about this, collectively, this will make a huge impact. So we need to say, no, this is enough. It has gone too far. We will not accept this. And having taken that responsibility, looking at your lifestyle, how you live every day within the environment that you function, what is there that you can change? Yes, you cannot change the work you do and who you are, and if you have money and where you go every day because of your lively functionality and work. But what you can do is definitely within that space, how do you conduct yourself? And are you aware of the threats that you have to face every day? Or are we just ignorant to the fact that we have people outside that may prey on this? While we're waiting for things to change and get better, what can we do to make this country a better place? Because this is where we are. And we need to start at home and say, what can we do here? And stop saying what is happening somewhere in a different country or what other people must do.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Mike and Herman, for being such a nice company. We do hope to have you back again here to help Africa understand security threats and how to surmount these. Well, that's a wrap today on The Square. I'm Sulaiman. Many thanks for watching.